Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my analysis, breakdown of the newly released Netflix Avatar The Last Airbender, live action Avatar, the teaser trailer that they put out last night. Plus, I have some other, screenshots as well here. But yeah, we're going to do an analysis and also my general thoughts. Really quickly, I will mention I did a live stream last night, kind of an impromptu one, about like an hour or so after the reveals happened. So if you want to check that out, the video on demand of that is still up on the channel. So you can check that out to see more sort of like on the fly, very shortly after the event, analysis and breakdown and kind of reactions. But I wanted to also put out a video that's more of a kind of contained discussion as well. So like I say here, my general thoughts on this are that like I think I'm now pretty much like fully sold on this show in terms of the visuals. And I want to make that really clear that I think this trailer as a teaser definitely emphasized the visuals. It's kind of notable that there's only one line of dialogue. I have it quoted there, and it's from Gyatso, and it's in the background. We don't see the main characters say anything, so we don't really get a sense for the kind of like emotions, sort of the acting performances, how good the script overall is, necessarily like how the adaptation necessarily is going to be outside of the visuals being representative of the show. So I'm kind of sold on an aspect of the show because they've only shown us an aspect of it. I definitely still need to see more to fully judge this, in that The Last Airbender movie, from a certain point of view, looks alright. But where it went wrong was the script wasn't good. Those actors had to say some weird things in that script, and the adaptation had to cut everything down to a movie length, and it just created a lot of problems. They have more time to work with here. They know what not to do from the Last Airbender movie. So I'm relatively confident that they'll get it right. I see glimmers within this trailer that show me that the kind of a more emotional side of things, they are on the right path for the most part. But I definitely would like to see a scene that gets across stuff like the humor, the balance of like how much of the humor from the show are we going to have here? Are we going to try to be a little bit more serious, a lot more serious, or are we just trying to match the tone of the show? That's the stuff that this trailer doesn't necessarily get across. But I think in general, you have to say it was impressive showing. Super popular. I think most people pretty impressed. Because I think it definitely went from a general sense of like excitement at the prospect of this big trailer for this, but cautious optimism because we've been here before with live action. But I think the general take coming out of this is that they've pretty much delivered, and once as they go about revealing more of this, it works, and as the episodes I guess get released in February and it continues to kind of work, I do think they have a hit on their hands here. This seems to be following a very similar path to the Netflix One Piece, where it took people a little bit to get used to the visuals, but then it came about like, okay, is the script any good? Will they actually capture the feel of the show? And it turned out they actually did. I hope they continue in that trend, and Netflix kind of somehow manage to kind of almost do the impossible and get a amazing adaptation of One Piece and an amazing adaptation of Avatar. It would be a real kind of almost like turnaround for them compared to, in a way, what was expected early on. But yes, in general, I think it's worked. It's created a lot of hype, so you have to put this down as a pretty successful showcase. Having like the release date here and it not being too far away, also very, very helpful. So to go through some of the analysis, I mostly have screenshots here, again because of copyright stuff. I know from history, I showed like 10 seconds of the previous teaser trailer, the one with the symbols, in a stream, and it got claimed. I don't want to mess around with that, so I only have screenshots here. But yeah, like I said, in terms of dialogue, we only get this one line. It's kind of continued more or less across the entire trailer, but it seems to be one kind of continuous statement. Time is a funny thing. The past, the future, it all gets mixed up. There's only one way to keep it straight. Always remember who you are. And it is Gyatso speaking this. They confirmed this on the stream with the hosts, but I think it comes across that way as well. So, an interesting line. I suppose it's kind of meant to reference the whole idea that obviously the trailer starts off with basically a flashback sequence showing you a little bit of the Air Nomad genocide. I think the fact that Gyatso ultimately is talking about Aang is to a certain degree meant to highlight that he is a character out of time. He is from this previous generation, but he's now in the present, kind of 100 years on, and has to do things going into the future as well. And he has to stay true to who he is. And sort of there's a hint of the idea of the Avatar representing the past, present, and future as well. And Aang has to be the Avatar as well. I don't think it's like stunning line. It's fine. A little bit kind of odd that it is the only line in the trailer, because I'm not sure if it hits as hard as it perhaps should. But we have to wait and see what the actual Gyatso content actually is. Obviously, immediately confirming that, like, okay, we're getting some sort of a thing. I'm guessing they'll open with this to kind of highlight, what we're trying to avoid here with the second coming of the comet, effectively, is this is what happened with the first kind of use of the comet, Sozin's comet. So very cool opening of the shot, very important thing with the comet. Then they have a quick shot of the Fire Nation, basically, and this is as Gyatso is narrating over the time, highlighting that this is talking about the past. Then we get one of the most interesting, I think, shots of the trailer, and that is this one here, which seems to be the Enderma genocide attack on what I'm guessing is the southern air temple, just because it's Gyatso narrating it. Aang is the main character. They're both from the southern air temple. It's the one that would hit the hardest to kind of see it actually happen, and just the fact that it seems like there's a bit of space here. Kind of, I think it fits the general aesthetic of the Southern Air Temple. It's either this or the Northern Temple, because I think from the other shot here you can tell it is the kind of monks rather than the nuns here fighting. Because of course in Air Nomad culture it's the North and Southern temples that have the men, and then it's the Eastern and Western temples that have the women in general. But yeah, very cool. One thing that I think is important to note here is that I think in my initial trailer analysis in the live stream yesterday, I was just like, I think it's a little bit weird that there's just a couple of fireballs coming in. Is this the extent of Sozin's comet firebending? But actually, I saw a few people point this out. Look closer at this. I think I have a closer zoomed in shot here towards the bottom. Yeah. If we look a bit closer here, you can see each of these individual quote-unquote fireballs is actually 4 little jets of fire. These are firebenders flying through the air, landing on the air temple. You can see that as we go into the next shot, when it gets closer to them landing, you can see them kind of level out. They go from sort of the Superman kind of pose to sort of slowly kind of standing up as they kind of go for the landing here. And this makes complete sense. This is an ability that, for the most part, you do need the comet to use as a firebender, and makes sense that the air nomads in the temples are defended by the fact that they're up high on mountains, and so the comet gives firebenders access to a technique that can get them up there. So that's a very cool little detail, because again, even in canon, in the animation, we know very little about the specifics of the Air Nomad genocide, and so the fact that they're actually going to visualize at least some of it here is going to be fascinating. Now, is this just a general shot to just slightly expand? And I think the one visual we have early on in Avatar is kind of the idea of you see kind of air temples kind of almost burning a little bit in the background. Is it that? Or are we actually going to cut into a sequence that involves Gyatso, and we see Gyatso fight, maybe go down? Sozin maybe has a scene here at the start, because Sozin has an actor. What other scene are we going to involve Sozin with? like there's a lot of those kind of things with the trailer that's interesting to note. But in general, I think it looks very cool. Obviously, it's at nighttime. Most of the lights you see are just lights of kind of campfires, and then it's just the firebenders overall. And then here you see the kind of clash of a variety of Fire Nation soldiers against the air nomads defending their home, of course. In the background here, I think these are actually fireballs and not actually people. So we'll see how exactly that goes, how well they represent Sozin's Comet firebending overall, how brutal this scene looks. Will be super interesting to see. Then we cut to the boy in the iceberg. Very cool shot here, giving you a sense of like, okay, the backgrounds, the location stuff in this show, I think looks fantastic. The blues, the whites of the ice and snow here, I think looks great. Very realistic here. The kind of ball of ice that Aang and Appa are in, just kind of like wedged in here. I'm wondering, like, is it just a case of like, are they going to do this differently? Are they still going to have the situation where like Katara in her kind of emotion amplified waterbending like kind of cracks open and this kind of rises to the surface, or is this just kind of like embedded here and they kind of happen to kind of come across it, kind of hidden by all the kind of cliffs around? Will be interesting to see, but I think it looks very good. They do show us a shot here of Katara sort of, I guess, looking up, and probably it's her first time maybe seeing that there is actually someone inside. So quite good. I still would say I definitely preferred the kind of hero outfit of Katara over the kind of winter kind of coat style, but you know, that's just personal preference. There's a look at Sokka here. Looks pretty good. And then we cut straight away to Omashu. So we have the opening of the earth kind of gates here with earthbending, and inside you can see some very cool stuff here. Like just down here you can see the cabbage merchant, you know, cabbage cart as you enter, and then they do show a really nice shot of just panning up Omashu, this kind of like tiered rising kind of city. Of course, the delivery system with all the chutes winding around the place, I think it looks incredible, and it really gets across the idea that this is the second biggest city in the Earth Kingdom. Like, if this is how good this looks, imagine if they get to book 2, how Ba Sing Se is going to look when they do an establishing shot there. I really do think that this looks kind of sensational. I think you can tell they've definitely taken the time to get the kind of CG elements right, based on what we've seen up to now. So that looks really good. A bit of extra analysis. I have this one here. This is kind of a zoomed in shot, but if you catch the very first like frame before we begin the pan up, you can see, I'm guessing this is meant to be kind of Aang as Bonzu Pippin-Paddle-Opsicopolis III kind of entering the city, because that's why the gates get opened, of course, in the show. And I think you get the rough sense that like there's the Momo ears, kind of like Momo on his back or something like that here. So I think that's what they're going for here. But again, some of these kind of shots are a little bit difficult to make out because they go by so quick, and it's almost hard to catch the trailer at a point where like the quality is still there. But I think that might be what this is, Bonzu Pippin-Paddle-Opsicopolis III. But we'll continue on. So we were here, we got to see Omashu. Then we cut to a shot of Zuko walking through with the lineup of all of his men, I guess, here. Now what's interesting to me is he has the sword like a scabbard on his back. The swords don't appear to be in it at the moment, but I don't think he's carrying them. So has he just come back from something? That's what this almost comes across as. Like, is this him like arriving back on the ship after his Blue Spirit mission, but he's obviously taken the mask off or something like that? Hence why he looks a little bit kind of somber, almost sad, and Iroh looks on as like, and almost kind of like, where have you been? Because he's wearing the kind of what you would assume is kind of like the Blue Spirit kind of like ninja suit. Otherwise, like we've seen shots of him wearing like the typical Fire Nation uniform, or like his Fire Nation uniform. So will be interesting to see what this one is. Like, is this Blue Spirit? Is this part of like the Storm episode? It might be that, because they do have someone to play Lieutenant G. So are we going to get that sequence where he has the kind of conflict with G, but this is where the backstory gets told to the crew? There's a few different options for this to take place. This might be something related to, like, is this Zuko meeting Zhao? There's a few options. It's hard to tell. We get a better look, side-on view of the scar. I think everyone's going to have their personal preference on this. My general thoughts are that I think it's visible enough that you always notice it, but I understand why they don't want to make it look absolutely kind of gnarly and brutal. As well, I also understand, maybe from just a kind of logistics on set perspective, they probably don't want this effect to take too long to put on the actor. It just kind of helps that way. It's clear he's got a pretty large, noticeable scar on a large part of his face. It gets, I think, the point across pretty well. So there's that. Then we get this shot. So we have what seems to be a messenger hawk arriving at this tower here to deliver a message. Now, based on the show, what we would assume that this scene is this is the moment when Zhao potentially gets promoted and is suddenly able to command the Yuyan archers. Previously, he was lower rank than the other guy. Is it that? Or, connecting what happens immediately next, we get a shot of the throne, we pan over to Ozai, and then he's angry at something. What if this is the message about the Avatar's return being kind of like delivered to the Fire Lord? It gets delivered here, the word makes its way back to Ozai, and this is why he's angry in this scene, is that he finally realizes the Avatar is back. Could be that, but it could be the promotion scene. We'll see what they do. Like, we're not even sure necessarily what elements of specific episodes they are going to use, but we'll see what exactly they do. Daniel Day Kim here as Ozai. I think there's universal praise of the casting and the general look here. They got it so right. And as I mentioned on the live stream last night, in comparison to, say, like the Last Airbender movie, this is to me one of the biggest like casting upgrades. The actor they chose in the movie to play Ozai, I just didn't buy at all. I don't think it worked in any way. This is spot on, I think. So really a good choice there. And then Major's kind of almost a surprise, but I'm so happy they included her here. We do get some Suki in the trailer. Like, Suki is this character who I think, you know, becomes a part of the team at the end. Like, her importance kind of rises as the series goes, because of course in the animation she was introduced in episode 4, but then they included her later on because she was actually pretty popular from the earlier episodes. So they have the opportunity to, I suppose, utilize her more, knowing her importance earlier on in this show. So I like that they're emphasizing that here, in that they emphasize this, of course, rather than anything with Yue. Now, admittedly, this is, I guess, meant to be our sort of like early season trailer. There's nothing, I don't think there's really anything from the Northern Water Tribe stuff in the trailer, so I'm assuming this is all from the first, probably half of the season, maybe the first 5-ish episodes. But very cool. The headpiece, the Kyoshi Warrior outfit, the paint here, especially after the novels, if you know the significance of this, like the Dao Fei makeup, the Flying Opera Company, I think it looks fantastic. So very cool here. And then they do show the shot here of her, I guess, with the makeup off, and a bit of a kind of, I guess this is a very much teasing the romance here in this moment between the two of them separately. So it looks like they're going to really emphasize this episode a lot more. There is, I think it's the second episode, is literally just called Warriors. So it seems like, for the most part, they are going to give the Kyoshi stuff quite heavy expansion, because of course Suki's mother, Yukari, is a new character for the live action. So they're emphasizing some stuff here. We expect Avatar Kyoshi to be utilized, I suppose, a little bit more than she of course was in book 1. So there's a few interesting stuff there. And then we do also get a shot of training the other Kyoshi warriors. So you get a look at the fans here, and again this is probably one of the better looks at the actual full outfit with the armor and the kind of green robes. I think it looks very good, very accurate, both in terms of the location and just the look of the characters as well. We then cut to Crescent Island. So you can see they're kind of going through a lot of these early book 1's kind of key moments of, like, we're seeing some Southern Water Tribe stuff. We'll see some Southern Air Temple stuff a little bit in a minute. Warriors of Kyoshi, King of Omashu. Now this is basically, I suppose, episode 8. You know, the Fire Temple stuff. On Crescent Island, so with the volcano, the lava magma stuff here, looks fantastic. You can just about see just there the actual temple itself, kind of up on the kind of like embankment here, and then there is the temple, which is of course where Aang is heading. And you can see in the next shot, Aang arrives in on glider here. So, very cool stuff there. Getting to see the glider extended. It'll be interesting to see like how much of a full scene this exactly is. But then, we hadn't really seen a lot of Aang up to now, but we do get kind of, I suppose, properly introduced to him as the trailer progresses. So we see him arriving here, airbending, the dust kind of disperses, and we get a very close-up shot of Aang. And I think it looks very good. I like this kind of more normal kind of orange shawl than the kind of more wintry one we saw in the main promo image here. I think it looks a bit better than this here. And I think just like seeing it in more of a kind of normal shot, the tattoo feels a little bit more natural, whereas it feels like it's almost like glistening in the light here, like it's brand new, whereas it feels like, no, he just has a blue arrow tattoo in this scene. So I think it feels a little bit more kind of natural here. Not necessarily sure what scene this is going to be, because it's really hard to tell from in the background. He just arrives, airbending stuff out of the way, and then there's a cart in the background. Hard to tell for sure, but then we cut to what's clearly referencing 107. So Winter Solstice Part 1, the Spirit World, and the forest outside of Senlin Village, Senlin Forest, I guess. And so, like, Heibai stuff, I guess we're gonna do it. We don't see Heibai in the trailer, but the visuals, I think, have been so good. I'm very eager to see Heibai, definitely. So yeah, you can see a bit of the emotion here. So they're going for this moment here where Aang finds the burned forest, and I suppose the magnitude of this kind of impact, what is expected of him as the Avatar hits a little bit here. He drops to his knees, that like he was kind of meant to prevent this if he didn't run away to a certain degree, kind of blaming himself. So looks like they're going for that arc, which is pretty good. Then what we get here is, surprisingly, it's not made like absolutely clear that it's Ozai Zuko. I think everyone pretty much is in universal agreement it probably has to be Ozai Zuko here, but because we haven't seen Zuko with like full hair, it's almost hard to make it out. But I think it is like that's what it's meant to be. What's kind of slightly different about it is that Zuko is clearly blocking this attack from Ozai, at least partially. So you see Fire Fist, Stream of Fire, but you can see the kind of wedge here. Zuko is definitely blocking this from hitting him, and the fire's going around him. It's made even clearer here. So I'm guessing that's what happens here. It's just that, like, Zuko doesn't want to fight. Ozai approaches him and attacks. Zuko defends. But I'm guessing what happens is that Ozai just walks forward, and Zuko just can't defend anymore. And now with defenseless Zuko, he's just like, boom. So just maybe slightly extending the scene. Will they actually have Zuko fight back? Probably not. I think it's fine to add in like a little bit of defense, and it kind of highlights almost a little bit more of that, like, oh, it's not just Zuko looks up and gets burned. He actually tries to defend himself in a way. He protects himself from getting absolutely kind of wrecked all over the place. but he still gets the scar in his face. So will be interesting to see overall how this scene is done. But it is a look at firebending kind of more close up of like, here's like firebending defense here, and like kind of splitting the fire here, the stream of fire. Looks pretty good, but we don't get too many close-up looks at bending throughout it. Then we get a shot of Zuko putting a picture of Aang up on his kind of wall, I suppose, to investigate, trying to find the Avatar. Where is he? Where has he been? You can see the kind of master of evasiveness stuff here, as he's all over the place, of course. Interestingly, right here, you can see what's clearly meant to be Yang Chen. Like, it basically has to be Avatar Yang Chen. Now, is it just like this is what a typical air nomad kind of woman looks like? Perhaps, but I think this is kind of like in sort of like a lot of statues and depictions of Yang Chen, how she is typically shown. So an interesting one in that, I guess, for Zuko prior to this, he's kind of thinking to himself, like, he doesn't know if it's a man or a woman, the new air avatar. Are they old? Is there any chance that they're young? Like, what's going on here? And so this is the most recent information that he has. Otherwise, you can see like the map of the world here. So you can see the Fire Nation goes into the Fire Islands, and then this is the side of the Earth Kingdom and stuff like that. So interesting stuff there. So nice little details, some Easter eggs there, I guess. Then we get Iroh and Zuko kind of in action fighting. We do see Zuko do this kind of crazy flying, flipping, firebending kick. So he kind of, as he jumps up, he generates fire, and then he kind of flips around. The foot comes around and the fire creates this like arc like this. Now, the shot cuts off before we see who he's aiming this at or who he is hitting, but I'm guessing this is that sequence where Iroh is in the kind of like kind of hot spring thing that he makes. The earthbenders find him and capture him, and Zuko, I guess in the middle of his training, realizes like, oh, where's Iroh gone? And this is how they kind of find each other. I'm guessing this will be a little bit of a way to just add to Zuko's arc in the middle of a lot of other stuff going on. Because again, you have certain episodes where Zuko's more of a focus, certain episodes where the gang is more of the focus. So you kind of want to have a bit of side plot stuff going on. That's the only thing I can picture this as being, is this the Zuko Iroh versus the Earth Kingdom soldiers? Probably has to be. But yeah, the acrobatics of this move is very cool, but I definitely want to see more of how the choreography and showcase of bending actually is. We don't get to see too much of it, like I said earlier in the trailer. There is a shot of Azula here. Now, we've seen Azula before because, of course, they showed her off in the other images. So, like, we have an image of her in her, like, Fire Nation outfit. Also, clearly, Ty Lee and May in the background, I think, as well. So, kind of highlights, okay, they're using Azula in book 1. If you're accurate to the show, Azula only appears in the flashback with Zuko. She's there to witness the fight with Ozai, Zuko getting burned. And then at the end, Ozai sends her off to basically, you're in charge, you find the Avatar. So it's pretty confirmed, I guess, they're doing more with her, because why are May and Ty Lee in this book? I'm guessing they're just moving up Azula, forming her team to being, throughout probably maybe the second half of the book or something like that, she's forming her team, and then she will come into play in her more, I suppose, typical story form more next book. But we have the setup, we know who she is. She doesn't have to have a debut in book 2. We already know who she is. So that'll be an interesting one to follow, just how much screen time Azula actually gets. But interesting they included her here. Bit of a random shot here. I can't really make out at all where this is meant to be, but you can clearly see it's Katara and Sokka not wearing their winter outfit. So some people were speculating maybe it's like in the ice trying to get Aang out from the inside. Not really sure. So they're clearly underground in some sort of a cave or something like that, but where's that going to happen and in what episode? There's a variety of places I guess it could be. But, you know, I think this is mainly just the highlight. Once they get out of the kind of winter climate, this is their main outfits. And I think these outfits look fantastic. I think these look a lot better than I think the initial showcase of Katara and Sokka that we saw here. Like, I think showcasing Sokka like this initially was kind of like, I don't know about that. That's a very one-off outfit that he wears like on occasion. Similarly, showcasing Katara initially with the winter coat. Whereas I think this outfit for both characters I think looks pretty strong. Then we cut to Aang going into the Avatar state here. So you can see they showed, the way they show this is the glow kind of gradually comes down the arrow and he's about to do something. Hard to say where he is. There's some speculation like, is this maybe one of the first scenes where we maybe get a glimpse of the north? I'm thinking it's maybe more Southern Air Temple Sanctuary, that maybe they have a bit of a Hall of Avatars, Aang has an Avatar connection type scene, but still cool that we get to see the glow, of course. Then we have this scene. So there's a few questions about this one. So what happens here is that we're in Kyoshi Island here, obviously, because you can see a Kyoshi warrior here. I'm guessing this is Suki and or Sokka wearing Kyoshi armor. But you can also tell from the kind of houses, they're on fire. That's exactly what happens at the end. Now, the one question, the more obvious one is this kind of Fire Nation commander guy, is this Zhao? Or is it just someone else? Some random other commander? I've had like literally probably 50-50 on the live stream yesterday and then asking earlier on Twitter. Everyone seems to be like either very strongly, yes, this is Zhao, I'm pretty sure it's Zhao, or no, this is not Zhao. Because obviously, to be accurate, Zhao doesn't appear in this episode. It's Zuko who leads the attack on Kyoshi Island, not Zhao. But they might change it up and have Zuko and Zhao be involved together in more situations if they want to give Zhao a bigger role. The outfit here does look different than Zhao is shown in the image that we got a few weeks ago. You can see here he kind of has the cross kind of like double sash, whereas here this character clearly just has kind of one bigger sash over one shoulder. Now we know Zhao gets promoted a couple of times throughout book one, so maybe the different outfit is just representing that. But it's an interesting one because we can't say for sure it's not Zhao because it's Kyoshi and Zhao doesn't appear here because they could change things. But either way, it's some sort of a Fire Nation commander character and they are here. Then we have to talk about this. What happens here is, of course, something shoots out of the sky. It's clearly meant to be Aang. Smashes into the ground and we get this shot of like air bending kind of bomb goes off and everyone is thrown back here. Aang as the epicenter, and this is, I guess, how he fights off the Fire Nation soldiers. So I'm thinking like, so does this mean they're potentially going with an Avatar state scene to save Kyoshi Island rather than the Unagi sequence? Probably actually for the best, because the main thing here would be you want to utilize Kyoshi more and use this as like, hey, this is a place directly super heavily related to a past Avatar. You have an actress for Kyoshi. Where are you going to have scenes for that character? You have to do some stuff here. Now the question people have is that if you, even as you go through this kind of frame by frame, the colors don't obviously come across as this is Aang in his bright, yellow, orange, and red air nomad colors coming out of the sky. But you can clearly see there's at least a trail of white representing the arrow. So the question here is really like, is it just Aang and he looks weird because it's this kind of weird shot of him like shooting like a rocket out of the sky? Or is this kind of meant to be like Aang channeling Kyoshi like we saw in Avatar Day? Like we see him do with Roku in 108. This, since those scenes, basically, very rarely used situation where you can kind of almost embody a past Avatar in certain situations. If it is Kyoshi, and that's maybe what they go, and it's some sort of a kind of visual type thing where it almost is like flashing back and forth. It's Aang, it's Kyoshi, it's Aang, it's Kyoshi. That's why there's an element of the arrow tattoo, because of course Kyoshi doesn't have arrow tattoos. But there's the Kyoshi element there. that could be interesting, because I think that's a good way to do it. Like, Kyoshi, of course, always wanted to protect the island. That's why the island was formed. So a connection, a spiritual connection here to a past avatar would be a very cool scene to do, in my opinion. But yeah, just speculation there. What do you think's going on here, both with Aang and the commander character? Who are they? Then this is just a quick shot. You can see Appa coming up. I mainly had this because I was putting these screenshots together before they put out the clearer screenshot of Appa from later on. But this is just a scene in the trailer where you can see Appa fly up out of the sky, getting a sense of the animation of like Appa's movements. It looks very cool as the gang is like hanging on at the side. Very cool sequence. Let me just cut down to the Appa picture so you can see it here. Full-on screenshot posted on Twitter, so you get a look at Appa's face, and I think Appa looks fantastic. The fur looks super realistic, but it's still very accurate to the animation model. Like, you have the arrow in the fur, but I like that there's a little kind of bit, it's kind of like messed up here, like his fur is a bit messy because he's flying through, so it's not like a absolutely perfect arrow, but it's still definitely in that shape. The face, I think, looks very good, very accurate. I just want to see the eyes. I really would like a shot where we properly get to see the eyes, and just like a more like they talk to Appa and he just makes the noise. I think that would be a very cool scene to have, but I think it looks great. Appa here, this is obviously meant to be the Patola mountain range in or around the Southern Air Temple. Looks great. So yeah, we'll scroll up here. Not too much more to talk about here. This is probably the scene where we get at least a glimmer of like kind of a bit more of an emotional thing, where you can see like just Sokka chilling on the saddle up here, which I kind of like, bit of kind of casual, just arm over the shoulder. It's kind of nice. Katara, this seems like she's trying to cheer up Aang, because Aang obviously has a bit of a kind of sad, somber look on his face, and you kind of wonder, like, is this arriving at the Southern Air Temple, or is this leaving the Southern Air Temple? Because what happens here is Aang's looking sad. Katara kind of points out that, hey, there's a lemur here, and we get to see Momo, and this immediately cheers Aang up because he sees another kind of animal, something to represent that his culture isn't completely gone. So Momo's flying here. I think Momo looks very good as well. You get to see the eyes here. Again, because Momo's not as much of a hybrid animal as others, there obviously is an element of you have to match what some lemurs actually look like, but I think it looks good. The blend of kind of cuteness plus there has to be some sense of realism to it, I think is pretty well done. But then Momo lands on Aang's shoulder, and he gets some kind of scratches, rubs, and he obviously really likes it here. And Aang is a lot happier here. So the question here is probably like, is this the moment where Momo joins the group? Like, they've encountered him previously, but here he is, they're leaving maybe without him, he flies after them, and this is the kind of happy moment at the end of the Southern Air Temple? Or is this like arriving on the scene, Aang's not seeing any sign of other airbenders or sky bison or anything like that, and this is the first animal they encounter, and so this is just like the first encounter? Hard to say. Does it matter too much? But still, it's interesting to kind of speculate about. But then we get this moment here. This is the arrival at Kyoshi Island. So we get to see Appa, and we get this nice shot as we kind of pan up from Appa's kind of tail up onto the saddle, kind of over Sokka's shoulder. You can see Momo's here as well. Katara and Aang up front. And the big thing here, you can see just here, that is the statue of Kyoshi. Zoomed in, you can't really make out the details. It's very, very far away. But this is Kyoshi Island and the arrival at it. So, very cool shot here, highlighting that again. They have Momo as they arrive here. So, interesting stuff. And then, yeah, this shot obviously is meant to fit in there, probably in the same region. Aang looks kind of a little bit sad here. So, I'm assuming this shot probably happens like just before this. Like, we probably see Appa's face and then zoom into this shot here. Then February 22nd is confirmed. So this is what the rumors were saying. It's absolutely confirmed. Sooner than I think a lot of people were expecting. But also the show probably has been delayed quite a bit. So it was probably expected that it's not too far away, but still exciting that it's not an eternity away. Like, we get to, it's only a couple of weeks until Christmas effectively, and then once we're at Christmas, we're into the start of the new year, and then once the new year starts, like, we're not too far away from late-ish February, so super exciting, not too long to go. And then these are just some of the extra ones I pointed out, the kind of Bonzu, Pippin, Paddleopsicopolis stuff, the Sozin's Comet, fire flying, firebenders, stuff like that. And then this shot is a new banner image they have up on Netflix itself. So if you go on actual Netflix, look up the show, this is the banner that they have, basically meant to represent kind of Aang on the rock, kind of overlooking the world, I suppose, to a certain degree. But it seems like they're doing it here in the Southern Air Temple, looking out over the, I guess that's the Southern Air Temple right here. Cool shot. Interested to see more, obviously. Yeah, then just some final thoughts here. In case you missed this, it actually come out as news. We know the names of the episodes for Netflix Avatar. There's going to be 8 episodes. So we're going to have the first episode, The Last Airbender. Second episode, Warriors. So obviously the Warriors of Kyoshi is going to be here. So I guess that confirms the first episode is going to be, I guess, 101, 102, and 103. Unless Warriors includes 103 at the beginning. But I think we know they're going to do some expanded stuff and turn what was a relatively just contained episode into more of a thing here in this. And we've seen Suki in the trailer. We know they have an actress for Kyoshi and stuff like that. Omashu getting a full episode title is fascinating because it's obviously a super notable location. But the episode itself is not, in the grand scheme of the book, the most important. So I'm assuming there's going to be probably... I've always assumed that what they'll do with this is that this will be the episode where they really emphasize sort of, I guess, the Earth Kingdom, how they fight back against the Fire Nation, of relying on the second biggest city and stuff like that. And, you can maybe expand on it, make Boomy into more important of a role or whatever. Interesting stuff. Episode 4 is very interesting. Into the Dark, and it's before Spirited Away, which is what we expect the kind of 107 into 108, the Winter Solstice two-parter to be, where the whole Avatar Roku stuff will happen. So Into the Dark kind of happening before is what? Is this going to be maybe where we get the backstories, the storm for the characters? Or is there a new edition kind of somewhere in here? It's hard to fully say because episode 5 is what, the King of Omashu. Episode 6, Imprisoned, it doesn't maybe look like they're doing that. Then there's 107, so what is this? Might this be more of a full flashback episode where we really delve into maybe some of that Ernoma genocide stuff? Gyatso, Sozin, they have an actor for Sozin. Masks obviously is meant to be the Blue Spirit, but is that just a whole episode to itself? Interesting. And then the last two, the North and Legends, clearly the finale stuff, where I guess the North has to include probably Northern Air Temple and the start of the Northern Water Tribe stuff. The transition between a lot of these episodes is going to be interesting to see how they do it. Legends, I'm guessing, is because, as far as we're aware, there's going to be some extra kind of Karuk, Avatar Karuk content in this, so we'll see how that works. But yeah, in general, very, very pleased with what I saw here. Obviously, like I said, there's still stuff we haven't heard any of the actors say any lines. We haven't seen any kind of complete scenes. We don't know how good the script is on a kind of line-to-line basis. We don't fully know how exactly the, adaptation is going to be. There's a lot we don't know. But in terms of a just core presentation from this trailer, it's looking good, and I think most people can see that it's shaping up pretty well. But there's still a lot of elements that we do need to see as we get more content for this. But for me, I've definitely gone from being quite neutral on the show to being pretty, kind of positive, hyped. At least as much as I can be, given that, an adaptation is not something that inherently interests me. I'm much more invested in new story content for Avatar. So the Avatar Studios stuff coming out, novels, new comics that actually have proper new stories. But the strength of the visuals here are kind of like, do you know what? I actually wouldn't mind seeing quite a bit of Avatar in this live action showcase if the visuals are going to be this good. So I'm definitely coming out of this in a kind of almost surprised just how kind of positive I'm feeling about this kind of way. But gotta wrap up the video there. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this trailer. What were the key points for you? Where are you at with the show right now? But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.